Enemy forces surrounded the mountain ridge. Machine gun fire tore through the trenches. The only sniper fell wounded. His silver M24 rifle tumbled to the ground. No one dared pick it up. A small woman, just a supply soldier, clutched her medical bag with trembling hands, then suddenly grabbed the weapon. As she lifted the rifle to her shoulder, the wooden stock tilted in the firelight, revealing 121 carved notches. The colonel rushed over, then froze, eyes wide. "Where did you get that rifle?" A single shot rang out. The enemy target dropped instantly. The battlefield fell completely silent. Anna Keller was 26 years old, small in stature, with brown hair tied back in a practical knot. She served as a supply soldier in the infantry battalion. Her daily duties were simple: carry ammunition, repair body armor, distribute rations to the troops. Her fellow soldiers looked down on her completely. "She's only good for bandaging wounds, not for real combat. A weak girl like her doesn't know anything about rifles." During training drills, Anna's performance was consistently poor. At the 100-meter shooting range, she usually missed the targets entirely. When running while carrying heavy weapons, she always fell behind, finishing last. Every time this happened, the young soldiers would burst into laughter, calling her the nurse with boots. Anna remained silent through all of this. She never argued back, never defended herself. At night, in the barracks, she would sit quietly cleaning an old rifle, her hands trembling slightly, but her eyes sharp and cold. The night guard later recalled, "I saw her disassembling and reassembling an M24 in complete darkness. She was as fast as someone who had practiced thousands of times. Nothing like a regular supply soldier." What the other soldiers didn't know was that Anna's apparent incompetence was carefully constructed. She deliberately missed shots during training. She purposely struggled with equipment she could handle expertly. She maintained the facade of someone who didn't belong in combat. During weapons maintenance, she would handle rifles with a familiarity that betrayed years of experience. But she did this only when no one else was watching. Her bunk was sparse and unremarkable, containing nothing that would hint at a military background beyond her current role. But hidden in her personal kit was a small, worn photograph of a group of soldiers she never spoke about. The other troops continued to treat her as a burden, someone they had to protect, rather than someone who could contribute to their mission effectiveness. They would assign her the safest positions during patrols. They would give her the lightest equipment during field exercises. They would speak over her during tactical briefings, assuming she wouldn't understand the concepts being discussed. Anna accepted all of this treatment without complaint. She carried medical supplies, distributed food, and maintained equipment with quiet efficiency. But when she thought no one was looking, her eyes would track movement across distant terrain with the automatic precision of someone trained to identify threats at extreme range. She knew the effective range of every weapon in their arsenal. She could calculate wind speed and bullet drop by instinct. She understood battlefield tactics at a level that exceeded most of the officers in the unit. All of this knowledge remained hidden beneath the surface of a supply soldier who seemed barely competent at basic military tasks, until the day when hiding became impossible. The unit was conducting what they thought was a routine patrol through a narrow valley. Intelligence had indicated the area was secure, just another standard reconnaissance mission. Anna carried her usual load: medical supplies, extra ammunition, communication equipment. She stayed in the middle of the formation, protected by the more experienced combat soldiers. Everything seemed normal until the world exploded around them. A series of RPG rounds tore through the mountainside, sending rock and debris cascading into the valley. The detonations were so close that the shock waves knocked several soldiers to the ground. Machine gun fire erupted from multiple positions on the ridgeline above them. The unit had walked directly into a carefully planned ambush. Soldiers dove for whatever cover they could find. Some were wounded in the initial barrage. Others were pinned down by the intense crossfire. Their primary sniper, Sergeant Martinez, took a round to the shoulder while trying to identify enemy positions. His prized M24 rifle, a weapon with a silver finish that gleamed even in the harsh mountain sun, slipped from his hands and tumbled into the rocky trench beside him. The rifle landed just out of reach of any of the soldiers who were pressed flat against the trench walls, trying to avoid the bullets cutting through the air inches above their heads. "Someone get that rifle!" shouted a squad leader, but no one could move without exposing themselves to enemy fire. Anna was crouched over a wounded soldier, pressing gauze against a bleeding arm wound when her eyes fell on the abandoned M24. For several seconds, she stared at the weapon while bullets whistled overhead. Her hands, which had been steady while treating the wounded man, began to tremble. Then, in a movement that surprised everyone who saw it, she lunged forward and grabbed the rifle. The moment her hands wrapped around the weapon, something changed in her posture. The trembling stopped. Her breathing became controlled and steady. As she lifted the rifle to examine it, the wooden stock caught the light from the fires burning around them. Carved into the wood were dozens and dozens of small notches, each one precisely cut. Colonel Ross Hale, who had been coordinating the unit's response from a covered position, saw Anna with the rifle and rushed toward her position. When he got close enough to see the notches clearly, he stopped dead in his tracks, his eyes widening in recognition and disbelief. "Where did you get that rifle?" Anna didn't answer. She was already settling into a prone shooting position, the M24 fitting into her shoulder like it belonged there. She peered through the scope, her eye finding the sight picture with practiced ease. Her breathing slowed to the rhythm of someone who had done this many times before. The crosshairs settled on an enemy machine gunner who was pouring fire into their position from a rocky outcrop 300 meters away. Anna squeezed the trigger. The shot echoed across the valley with authority. The enemy gunner pitched forward and was still. The intense machine gun fire that had been suppressing the unit suddenly stopped. In the relative quiet that followed, every soldier in the trench turned to stare at the small supply soldier who had just made an impossible shot under combat conditions. A young private whispered to his companion, "I used to laugh when I saw her miss targets in training, but that shot just saved the entire squad." Anna was already working the bolt, chambering another round, scanning for the next threat. The battle gradually subsided as the enemy forces withdrew, realizing their ambush had failed. The unit consolidated their position and began treating the wounded. Rumors spread through the ranks like wildfire. "Anna Keller isn't just a supply soldier, she's a real sniper?" Colonel Ross called her into the makeshift command bunker for a private conversation, his expression serious and demanding answers. 121 marks on that rifle stock," Ross said directly. "Those aren't decorations. Those are confirmed kills. Tell me the truth." Anna sat silently for a long moment, then exhaled slowly. "I used to serve with Ghost Unit. Call sign, Spectre 12. The full story emerged piece by piece. Anna had been part of Ghost Unit, an elite sniper team that conducted classified operations with no official records. They operated in the shadows, eliminating high-value targets that conventional forces couldn't reach. Each of the 121 marks carved into her rifle stock represented a confirmed kill. Not just any targets, but the kind of threats that required the precision and patience of a master sniper. She had spent 3 years as Spectre 12, completing missions that most soldiers never even heard about. Her accuracy rate was legendary within the special operations community. But during one critical mission, she had hesitated for half a second before taking a shot. That brief moment of human uncertainty had cost the life of her spotter and closest friend. I requested transfer out of Ghost Unit after that, Anna continued. I buried my past and asked to serve as regular support personnel. I never wanted to pick up a rifle again. Ross studied her carefully. Did you really think you could clean weapons and distribute ammunition and just forget who you used to be? That rifle recognized its real owner today. The change in how her fellow soldiers treated Anna was immediate and profound. The troops who had mocked her shooting ability now avoided eye contact, embarrassed by their previous behavior. A young soldier who had consistently made jokes about her incompetence approached hesitantly. Ma'am, if you hadn't taken that shot today, I probably would have died. I owe you my life. Others began to share what they had observed but hadn't understood. I never knew why you would sit up cleaning weapons after everyone else went to sleep. Now I realize you weren't practicing. You were trying to forget. The unit medic spoke up. During the firefight, I watched you maintain perfect firing discipline while simultaneously treating wounded soldiers. That's not something you learn in basic training. Anna listened to their observations, realizing her cover had been less effective than she had believed. I thought I was hiding better than that. You can disguise your performance, Ross replied, but you can't disguise instincts that come from years of elite training. The communications specialist added, the way you handled that rifle, the speed of your target acquisition, the calmness under fire, that's not luck. That's muscle memory from hundreds of combat missions. Anna began to understand that trying to suppress her abilities hadn't made them disappear. It had just delayed the moment when she would have to decide whether to use them again. Spectre 12 didn't die that day 3 years ago, Ross continued. She just went into hiding. Today, she came back to save lives instead of carrying guilt. Some of the soldiers wanted to know more about her Ghost Unit service, but Anna remained reluctant to discuss those years in detail. Those missions are classified, she said simply, and some memories are better left alone. But the young private who had been wounded in the ambush spoke up. Ma'am, I don't need to know about your past missions. I just need to know that someone like you is watching over us. Anna realized that her skills didn't have to be a source of shame. They could be a tool for protecting the soldiers she served alongside. For the first time in 3 years, she began to think that maybe Spectre 12 could exist alongside Anna Keller. Maybe the sniper and the supply soldier could be the same person. Maybe it was time to stop running from who she used to be. After the battle, the official report simply stated, Unit successfully defended position during enemy contact. Anna's name wasn't mentioned in the paperwork, but in the mess tent that evening, everything had changed. When Anna entered for her meal, the entire tent fell silent. Not the uncomfortable silence of mockery, but the respectful quiet of soldiers, acknowledging one of their own. The soldier who had laughed at her most cruelly during training approached her table. He set down his food tray across from her. Ma'am, I owe you an apology. I didn't know who you really were. Anna simply nodded, not needing words. Other soldiers who passed her table offered similar gestures of respect. Not dramatic or theatrical, but genuine acknowledgments from people who understood what had happened on that mountainside. Colonel Ross stood up in the center of the mess tent, his voice carrying clearly to every corner. Those 121 marks weren't carved to celebrate victories. They represent burdens, shadows that some soldiers carry. But today, because of one of those marks, We're all still here to share this meal." There was no applause, no cheering, but the atmosphere in the tent had fundamentally changed. A young medic, who had worked alongside Anna during the firefight, sat down beside her. "Ma'am, would you be willing to teach some of us about long-range shooting? Not for killing, but for protecting our unit?" Anna considered the request carefully. "I'm not sure I'm the right person to teach anyone how to take lives." "With respect, ma'am, you didn't teach us how to take lives today. You taught us how to save them." That evening, Anna found herself at the makeshift shooting range with several of the soldiers she had served alongside as an equal. But now they watched her demonstrations with the attention of students learning from a master. She began to realize that her expertise didn't have to be a burden she carried alone. It could be knowledge she shared to help others survive. From that day forward, the chair next to Anna in the mess tent remained empty. Not because people were avoiding her, but as a silent acknowledgement of the space that exists around someone who has carried the weight of difficult decisions. Anna began to understand that Spectre 12 and the supply soldier could coexist. One part of her past, one part of her present, both serving the same purpose: keeping her fellow soldiers alive. People easily mock a small woman who misses targets during training drills. But they never know that on her silver rifle stock are 121 carved notches, each one representing a memory forged in blood and fire. Anna Keller chose to serve in supply roles to escape those shadows. But when the battlefield called, a single shot reminded the entire world that heroes don't disappear. They just choose to serve quietly. The lesson is clear. Don't judge anyone based only on what they show during peacetime. The person you consider weak might be the reason you survive when everything goes wrong. Behind every apparent failure might be someone who has succeeded at things too difficult to discuss. If you've ever seen someone quiet do something extraordinary, leave a dot in the comments. And if you believe these stories of hidden strength deserve to be told, subscribe to SN Quiet Stories.